The days that followed were some of the hardest in Ade's life. Each time he stepped outside, he felt the sting of judgment in the eyes of the villagers. Wherever he went, there were condemning stares, whispers behind his back, and mocking laughter. But the worst came from the children. They had made up a song about him, a cruel chant that echoed his mistake for all to hear. Whenever Ade passed, the children would follow him, singing and clapping as they went. Ade ole, Ade gbewiri, Ade ole, Ade gbewiri. Their voices rang out loud and clear, calling him a thief, taunting him with every step. They laughed as they sang, delighting in his shame. Ade felt his heart sink every time he heard them. He wanted to tell them to stop, to leave him alone, but he knew better. If he scolded them, their parents would only add to his troubles. So he kept his head down, swallowed his pride, and walked on, hoping that one day their taunts would fade. Meanwhile, at home, his grandmother's condition grew worse. She was fading, her strength slipping away a little more each day. Some evenings, she would call Ade to her bedside, her voice barely more than a whisper. She would tell him soft, soothing stories about the ancestors, tales she'd once told him as a child. Now, she spoke of them as if she could see them waiting for her, just beyond the veil of life. Soon, I'll be with them. Ade, she would say, her eyes distant, gazing somewhere he couldn't see. They are calling to me. They are waiting. But Ade wasn't ready to let her go. He would cling to her frail hand, tears streaming down his face as he begged, "Please, Grandma, don't leave me. I need you." Her eyes would soften, and she would gently pat his hand. But they both knew her time was running out. Despite her best efforts, despite Ade's prayers, her body was too weak to keep going. One quiet night, after months of struggle, Ade's grandmother closed her eyes and slipped away. She went peacefully, her last breath soft as a whisper, leaving Ade alone in the world. When he found her that morning, he felt his heart shatter. The only person who had ever truly loved him was gone. The days that followed were filled with a sorrow so deep it seemed to hollow him out. He cried until his tears dried up, the grief pressing down on him like a weight he couldn't lift. The house was silent, empty of her warm laughter, her gentle voice. He felt lost, abandoned, in a world that seemed colder than ever. Mama Wero heard of his loss and felt her heart ache for him. She remembered the look in his eyes that day she had stood up for him, the look of a child who had already lost so much. She couldn't stand by and let him suffer alone. So, one afternoon, she came to him, her eyes filled with kindness, and offered him a place in her home. "You don't have to be alone, Ade," she said softly, reaching out to him. "Come with me." Ade nodded, unable to find his voice, but feeling a spark of warmth in the kindness of her gesture. He moved into Mama Awero's house, and she took him in as if he were her own. She cooked for him, made sure he had clean clothes, and gave him a warm place to sleep. Slowly, bit by bit, she helped ease the ache in his heart. Mama Awero, the woman who had always longed for a child, now had a son to care for, and Ade, who thought he had lost everything, found a new family in her. Though his heart still ached with the loss of his grandmother, he knew she would want him to carry on, to live with the kindness she had taught him. And so, with Mama Wero by his side, Ade began to heal, finding strength in the woman who had saved him twice, once from the flames of the villagers, and now from the darkness of grief. Together, they began to build a new life, one that honored the love and teachings of his grandmother, even as he looked to the future with a heart just a little lighter. Mama Wero became the rock that Ade leaned on after his grandmother's passing. She filled his life with warmth and care, and for the first time since his loss, he felt a glimmer of hope. But after 3 months after Ade moved into her home, Mama Wero fell ill. She thought it was nothing serious, a simple fever, something she could cure with her usual herbs. But when the fever persisted, she grew concerned and decided to consult an herbalist. The herbalist took his time, examining her closely. Finally, he looked at her with a smile. Mama Wero, you are not sick. You are pregnant. Mama Wero's mouth dropped open. Pregnant? After so many years of waiting and praying, could it really be true? Tears welled up in her eyes, and she couldn't hold back the overwhelming emotion. She burst into tears, but they were tears of pure, uncontainable joy. For years, she had accepted her fate of childlessness, believing it was too late for her to become a mother. But now, against all odds, she carried a life within her. As she made her way back home, a feeling of wonder filled her heart. She couldn't stop thinking about how this miracle had happened. She thought of Ade, the orphan boy she had taken in. Deep down, she felt that he was somehow connected to her blessing. Perhaps it was the kindness she had shown him that had brought this unexpected gift into her life. When she arrived home, Mama Wero gathered her family to share the incredible news. They were all in shock at first, unable to believe that, after all these years, she was finally going to have a child of her own. But soon, they burst into cheers, embracing her and celebrating the miracle that had come to their family. As the years drew to an end, Mama Wero's younger brother, Tolu, returned to the village from the city. He hadn't visited in years, so he was eager to catch up with his sister. When he arrived, he was astonished to see her with a rounded belly. They laughed, talked, and reminisced about old times. Then, Tolu asked about the young boy who kept peeking shyly from the doorway. Iya Wero explained everything to him, how Ade had lost his family and how she had taken him in. She told Tolu about the kindness and warmth Ade had brought into her life, how she believed that Ade's presence had brought her this blessing of motherhood after years of heartache. Listening to her story, Tolu felt a tug in his heart. He looked at Ade, standing there quietly, and thought about the possibilities that lay ahead for this boy if he were given the right opportunities. Sister, he said gently, Ade deserves a future with all the chances life can offer. If you allow it, I'd like to take him with me to the city. There, he can get a good education and learn skills that will make his life brighter. At first, Mama Wero shook her head. She clutched Ade closely, seeing him as a good luck charm and part of the reason her life had been blessed. The thought of parting with him made her heart ache, but Tolu was persistent. He reminded her that he would give Ade the best care, that he would open doors for him that he could never find in the village. After many conversations and sleepless nights, she finally agreed, though the decision weighed heavily on her heart. The day Tolu and Ade were set to leave for the city was filled with both excitement and sorrow. Mama Wero held Ade tightly, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "Remember, you are always my son. No matter where you go, I will always be here, praying for you." She watched, heartbroken but proud, as Ade waved goodbye and disappeared down the road with Tolu. When they reached the bustling city, Tolu introduced Ade to his family, who welcomed him warmly. For Ade, it was a new world, one filled with tall buildings, busy streets, and endless noise. It was overwhelming, but he was grateful for this chance. He knew this was a fresh start, a chance to make something of himself. Tolu enrolled Ade in school, providing him with everything he needed. Ade quickly became known for his kindness and politeness, but there was something else that stood out about him: his incredible speed. During sports activities, his physical education teacher, Uncle Dave, noticed how swiftly Ade moved. No matter the race, Ade would outrun everyone, leaving his classmates trailing behind. Uncle Dave, a passionate lover of sports, took an immediate interest in him. He had never seen such raw talent in a young boy and saw potential that could be nurtured into greatness. Uncle Dave pulled Ade aside one day and said, "You have a gift, Ade. With the right training, you could be a champion, not just here, but in competitions all over the world." From that day on, Uncle Dave began training Ade after school. He taught him the rules of running, guiding him on techniques that would help him run faster and conserve his energy. Ade loved the thrill of the races, and the encouragement he received made him feel alive. The city had changed his life, and he could feel the hopes and dreams of a brighter future growing within him. Every time he raced, he thought of his grandmother, of the struggles they had faced, and of Mama Awero's unyielding love. He ran for them, for the love that had carried him this far. And with each step, he felt closer to making something remarkable of himself, something that would honor the people who had sacrificed so much for him. Years passed, and Ade's life in the city continued to blossom. Under Uncle David's guidance, Ade's running skills developed rapidly. He trained hard every day, pouring his heart and soul into every practice. Uncle Dave was both tough and encouraging, pushing Ade to his limits, but always with a look of pride and confidence that gave Ade a sense of purpose. His natural speed, combined with disciplined training, transformed Ade into one of the best young runners in the region. When Ade turned 16, he entered his first major competition, a regional athletics tournament. He had been practicing for months, and the day of the race, the stadium was packed with cheering spectators. The air was filled with energy and excitement, but Ade was focused, his mind calm as he took his position on the track. He had been waiting for this moment, not only for himself, but for everyone who had believed in him. As the starting gun fired, he shot off the blocks with a speed that left the crowd gasping. Ade ran with all his heart, every step bringing him closer to victory. He crossed the finish line far ahead of his competitors, securing first place and a gold medal. That race marked the beginning of a remarkable journey. Ade's name began to spread throughout the region. Newspaper articles celebrated him as the Lightning Runner. He became known for his humility, always thanking his teachers, his uncle, and the memory of his grandmother, whom he carried in his heart. His coach, Uncle Dave, was his greatest supporter, guiding him through each victory and helping him remain grounded even as his popularity grew. Soon, Ade began competing in national competitions, representing his school and then his state. Each race brought him closer to his dream. With each victory, he felt as if he was honoring the sacrifices of his grandmother, Mama Wero, and Uncle Tolu, who had all helped him rise from a past filled with hardship. Mama Wero, though she remained in the village, was never far from his thoughts. Every few months, he would write her letters, updating her on his progress. She was thrilled, proud, and often reminded him to stay humble and grounded, to remember his roots and the values she had taught him. By the time Ade was 18, he was invited to join the national track team. The opportunity filled him with pride and excitement, yet he felt nervous, knowing that he would now be representing not just his city or state, but his entire country. During his training with the national team, he met athletes who had grown up with far more resources and privileges than he had. But instead of feeling intimidated, Ade used it as motivation, reminding himself that his journey had made him resilient. He trained harder, working through long days, early mornings, and sore muscles. His focus and determination became an inspiration to his teammates, who admired his humble nature and dedication. As he continued to rise in the world of athletics, Ade qualified to compete in international competitions, earning medals and recognition around the globe. Reporters from different countries interviewed him, asking about his background, and he would tell them his story of the small village he had grown up in, and of his grandmother's teachings, and of the woman, Mama Awero, who had saved him and believed in him when no one else did. One day, during an international competition, Ade met an athlete from another African country who had also faced struggles similar to his own. The two became fast friends, bonding over their shared dreams and determination. They often shared stories of their upbringing, how sport had been a way out of hardship, a path to something brighter. This friendship gave Ade a new sense of purpose, and he began dreaming not only of winning, but of one day giving back to other young athletes who were struggling to find their way. Then came the day he had only dared to dream of. Ade qualified for the Olympic Games. The moment he received the news, he could hardly believe it. Uncle Dave hugged him tightly, his eyes filled with pride. "You did it, Ade. You are going to make history." Ade's heart swelled with excitement and gratitude, knowing that this was a dream not just for him, but for everyone who had helped him get here. The Olympics were like nothing he had ever experienced. The stadium was massive, the crowd enormous, and the energy electrifying. Ade was surrounded by best athletes from around the world, each one as focused and determined as he was. But as he took his place on the track, he closed his eyes and pictured the faces of his loved ones. He imagined his grandmother, her gentle voice telling him to always stay true to himself. He thought of Mama Awero, who had stood by him in his darkest hour, and Uncle Tolu, who had opened the door to his new life. When the starting gun fired, Ade exploded off the blocks, his legs carrying him faster than ever before. He pushed himself to his limit, his eyes fixed on the finish line, and with a final surge of energy, he crossed it, feeling the tape break against his chest. He had done it. Ade had won gold for his country. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Ade could barely contain his emotions as he stood on the podium. The national anthem, playing as the gold medal, was placed around his neck. Tears filled his eyes as he looked out at the crowd, silently thanking everyone who had been a part of his journey. His story, a story of resilience, hope, and the kindness of others, had come full circle. After the Olympics, Ade became a national hero. He used his fame to establish a foundation in his grandmother's memory, dedicated to helping young athletes from disadvantaged backgrounds. His foundation provided training, equipment, and educational support to children in rural communities, giving them the same opportunities that had once seemed like a distant dream for him. He continued to race, breaking records and earning titles, but his true pride came from the young athletes he mentored, those who reminded him of himself. He often visited his village, where he was welcomed as a beloved son. Mama Awero, now a proud mother herself, would watch him with a joyful smile, knowing that her decision to start by him years ago had changed both their lives forever. Through every victory and every setback, Ade never lost sight of where he came from. His story became one of the most inspiring in the country. A boy who had once been an orphan child of the village, now a champion who had run his way into history. Thank you for watching. If you love the story, you will definitely love the next one. Click to watch now. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.